Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for waiting around for so long for me to come up with a new video for you. I think I've got something pretty cool in the works for you this time around though, so let's jump right into it. The last time we talked about Veracrypt and how you can use it to make yourself a very secure file folder, something that can't be broken into uh, by any normal conventional means. So let's talk about how we can make it more secure, even more secure with the more advanced features of Veracrypt. And this is just a little bit of extra added stuff on there. There's two features that I want to talk about today. The first one is what we call a PIM. This is called a personal iterations modifier. And essentially what it does is, I'm going to break it down really simple for you. If you want to get more research, I'll post a link to Veracrypt's documentation in the video description down below. But basically what happens is when you make a Veracrypt secure container, it has a section called the header file. And that header file is what kind of tells Veracrypt what is in the rest of the file. All right, and that header file is a small little piece of code that just kind of resides right at the very top of the entire file. Well, when it derives that header file, it does a whole bunch of calculations, like math calculations and stuff. The PIM, what that does is it modifies how many of those calculations it does. So by default, Veracrypt usually does about 485 of those calculations. But if you choose a PIM of, say, something like, I don't know, like 601. Well, then Veracrypt isn't going to do 485, it's going to do 601. And the thing is, if somebody tries to break into your file, the default, of course, is 485. So when they try to break into your file, even if they have your password, so they've got your password, and then they try to break into the file, Veracrypt's going to do the 485 by default. And that is not going to open up the file because Veracrypt is doing the normal default amount, but instead what needs to be done is the 601 that you initially put in. You can kind of think of it like this. If you say you've got a secret number of 20 and the default is to add 10 to it, all right? So if you tell somebody that the end result number is 30, then they can work backwards by just simply subtracting 10 and they'll get your secret number, right? But if you have a secret number of 20 and you add to it 10, then you also multiply it by something and you divide it by something and you do something else to it, whatever. And then ultimately at the end, you end up with 1,642. Somebody who knows that Veracrypt's default is the plus 10 will just simply subtract 10 from this. But that's not going to get you your secret number because that's just going to equal 1,632, which is not your secret number. So all this extra math that you did in the middle, that's what keeps this number secret from a person who can see this number easily. All right, so that's kind of how that works. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is something called key files. With key files, remember that header function I talked about? All right, well, that header function is also important along with your password. And your password goes through kind of the same modifications as that header file when you first create it. All right, so when you make a password, right, that password is stored as a hash, or basically a scrambled mixture of letters and characters and whatnot. Now, again, hashes is something that's a little bit more advanced for what I'm talking about here, so if you want to look that up later, you can. But basically, your password gets hashed. Now, your password gets hashed just as your password by default. But if you use something called a key file is essentially an extra file that you use, another file, let's say it's like a document or something, that gets pushed into the password, and then the password gets hashed. So let's say your password is something like a really bad password. Let's say your password is password. And let's just say, now this isn't true at all, but let's just say the password hash of password is H34. Okay, now the password hash is actually much longer than that. It's like 256 characters, but we're not going to worry about that right now. But let's go ahead and say now the next time you do it, you make password, but you make password and you use a key file. So let's take this key file and we'll push it into password here. There we go. Now this time around, your hash for the password is F2A. Okay, totally different. And for you as a normal person, you might be saying to yourself, I don't get this and I don't care. And that's fine. You can skip ahead to how we make it. I just want to let you know that this is a very secure way of strengthening your password. So even if you have a super weak password like password, using a key file makes it much harder to break into that file, because what happens is somebody who's trying to break into your Veracrypt folder or file is going to need that key file as well in order to accurately use your password, even if they steal your password from you. So somebody breaks in your computer, they see that you've got the password written down somewhere, they type it in and try to get into your Veracrypt file, and it doesn't work because Veracrypt's also expecting this key file right here to be inserted as well, because the password hash that it's comparing your password to isn't working. All right, so let me show you what this looks like in practice. And I'll post the documentation for all of this as well, the link to it, so you can kind of read up on it on your own. But let's take a look at how all of this works. All right, so in Veracrypt, we're going to go ahead and make a new secure containing folder real quick. I've already made one already, but I'm going to make another one to show you how this works. So we're just going to go ahead and say, select another one of these. We're going to create a volume. This is going to be a regular encrypted file container. It's going to be a standard Veracrypt volume, nothing new there. We're going to go ahead and select a file. If you want to make a new one, you can. I'm going to make mine on the desktop. Remember, wherever you make it, you can change it if you need to. So I'm going to call this one secure file. Remember, never save history. Go to next. We're going to keep all of these algorithms as the default. For the space, I'm going to just select 150 megabytes. You can select more, obviously, or less if you need to. I'm going to just select 150 for the demonstration here. All right, so for my password, I'm going to choose something super weak. I'm going to just call it password. That's W-O-R-D. There we go. And you can see it right there, password. All right, so for this, I'm going to do two things. Down here, I'm going to use a PIM. So I'm going to check this first. All right, nothing's going to change on here, but I'm going to just check it for right now. It'll ask me later on. For this next one, I'm going to select, I'm going to check use key files. And over here on this button where it says key files, this is where I'm going to select them. So with key files, you can select as many as you want, but here's the thing. Whatever key files you choose, you need to make sure that you always have access to them, because Veracrypt requires these files in order to open up your container. So if you put something super important in this container and then you lose the key files, you cannot get back in that container. The end. There's no way to do it. All right. So make sure you choose something that you're going to remember to use, and make sure you choose something that you're never going to lose access to. All right. So I'm going to go to add files, and I'm going to select a file, and you can use anything that you want, literally anything. It could be a Word document, it could be a picture, it could be a .exe, it can be a DLL, it could be any random file you can find, as long as it's a file. And as long as you will have access to it, you can use it. So I'm going to use this program that I wrote, Lesson 19 Text File Creator, and that's going to be my key file. Now, you can have as many key files as you want. I don't even know if there's actually a limit to it. Just keep in mind that it's only the first little bit of the file that's going to be used for performance issues. So if you pick like a giant movie file that's like 3 gigabytes big or something like that, it's not going to change the performance of the of Veracrypt. It's only going to be using the first few little bits of that file. All right, now again, you can use as many key files as you want, so load them up. But my suggestion, just choose one, because if you choose more than one, you might forget them, and then you're kind of, SOL. So we're going to say OK after I've chosen a key file. I'm going to remember it was this one right here. And then I'm going to hit next. It's going to give me that warning again about 20 or less characters. I'm going to say, yeah, it's cool, no big deal. Now, this is where I select my PIM. Now, you can think of a PIM as a pin like your ATM pin, but don't use that same PIN number. Just use a different number than what's listed here. So if you've got a PIM value of 485 as the default, and you want it to be more secure, you're going to select something larger. So I'm going to select something bigger. I'm going to select 501. Notice it says here, remember the number. In order to mount the volume, you need to remember that number. Think of it as like your ATM pin. If you lose that ATM pin, you can't get into your ATM card. So it's the same thing here. Now, the bigger the number, the slower it's going to be in opening up. So keep that in mind as well. But even just a different number is already more secure. All right, we're going to hit next. And this part here is where I'm going to be generating my header file, my header key, and this is going to be using these key files in order to generate that header file. And I'll explain what header files are in a future video when I talk about hidden volumes, because header files are essentially the instructions for Veracrypt to open up the volume. All right, so with that, I'm ready to go. I'm going to hit format because it's in the green. It's going to do a quick format, and now we're done. That's it. It's ready to go. So I'm going to exit this, and I'm going to open up my file container now to just make sure that it actually works. So here it is, secure files. So I'm going to select file and mount, and I'm going to go to my desktop where I save this file, and it was secure files. There we go. And now I need to put in my password. So just password, Password. I'm going to use my PIM, which was 501, and I'm going to use my key file. My key file, of course, was this lesson 19 that I wrote. So I'm going to just do this. It's going to look the exact same way as when I first originally made the secure file folder. I'm going to open that up. I'm just going to add in there, hit OK, and then OK again. And then it should mount it up. There it is. Done, ready to go. That's it. And so there I can put in all of my whatever special secret secure documents and stuff right into there, close it up, and then I can lock it down. And then just as a kind of proof of concept, just real quick, we're going to try and open it up again, but without using any of those things that we did before. So I'm going to put in the same password, Password, but this time I'm not going to use a PIM. It's okay. Use the PIM, but I'm not going to use the key file. So I'm not going to check key file. I'm going to hit OK. So even with just not the key file put in, Veracrypt still will not open up this file folder. It will not mount this device because it's missing part of the whole, it's missing part of the information that was used to create it originally. Okay, and the same thing can go if I don't put in the PIM. If I just put in the password, so somebody gets your password for whatever reason, they type it in and they hit OK, it's still not going to open up this file because, again, a lot of the information that was used to create the file is missing. And that's kind of the beauty of Veracrypt and how it works. One last thing to kind of help you out with the text file, or sorry, the key file thing. I found that it can be kind of hard to remember if you pick a random key file that has nothing to do with you whatsoever. I found that it can help to pick a key file that you are familiar with, or at least you know where to find it. You've created like a pattern for yourself. So let me show you what I mean. So I made this file generation program that I'm going to actually post for you in the description down below. So if you open that up and you type in how many files you want to create, you give it just a base file name. So in this case, I'm going to call it random text. And then you need to know your Windows username, which should be pretty easy. If you don't know it, you can just simply click on the Windows icon down here and it should show up here. Mine's not because, of course, or actually you can put it right there. There you go. So mine is WDAG utility account because this is a virtual machine. So WDAG utility account. It's going to ask if that's correct. I'm going to say yes, and then it's going to create files right there on your desktop. So check it out. It's called New Folder. If you open it up, inside there I have 100 random text files. There you go. And each one of them just has some random hash values in them. That's it. Nothing special. All right. You can create as many files as you want like this. And so what I would do in this case is I would create a new folder or a new file. So I'm going to select, so I don't want to mount to create a volume. All right, the regular type of volume, just like we just did a second ago. This one's going to be called it. Okay, those are going to be default. This is going to be again 150 megabytes. No big deal there. All right, password is still going to be password. But now here is where I'm going to deviate a little bit. So this says use key files. So for here, I'm going to go to my key files folder that I just made, this new folder right here on the desktop. Inside that folder, I'm going to find one file that I can remember the number of. So in this case, the number for me to remember that's really easy is 91. I remember 91 really easy. I can't explain why, but 91 is a really easy one. So I'm just going to select that one, hit open, and there's my key file. That's it. And so as long as I have this folder somewhere on my computer and I can navigate to it, I will remember that 91 is the key file that I want to use. And what this does is also if like an attacker, like a hacker or a bad actor or somebody trying to get into your computer for whatever reason and trying to get into your Veracrypt folder, if they see this, you can even label it as key files for Veracrypt. I mean, it'd be as obvious about that if you want to. If you've got enough text files in here, the amount of time it would take them to check your Veracrypt password with every single one of these files would be just astronomical, especially if you have like 1,000 or like 10,000 files in here. That's going to take way too long. All right, and so that's kind of the beauty of it. It just makes a folder of random files, and any one of these for an attacker could be the right file, but you're the only one who actually knows what the correct key file is. So there's just something else that I'm going to add there for you in the description, so you can use that if you want to. But hopefully this was a little bit more informative than the last couple of videos, because it's giving you a little bit more advanced maneuvers with Veracrypt, and I hope you enjoyed it overall. So take care and stay secure out there.